Welcome to episode 9 of Climate, Trees, and Legacy. I'm Connie Barlow. This is a coast redwood. This is Jedediah Smith State Park, very northernmost California, part of Redwoods National Park Complex. And I'm here taking a look at how redwoods naturally grow, and how they come up clonally here, and under what conditions, and how they seed and grow out beyond these elders here, because I'm mainly interested in taking a look at how landscapers a century or more ago have planted redwoods and their inland cousins, giant sequoias, in the Puget Sound area and also the Portland area too. They're starting to naturalize there, and that's the major things I'm going to show. 2 places where redwoods planted, 60, 80 years ago, are starting to seed, and babies are coming up in regrowth Douglas-fir forests. Everything I've seen here looks like it's a redwood. There's some young ones, and quite common to the species is having these clones come up here right from the roots and the burls. Just in case something happens to the main stem, it's going to keep growing again. And in fact, this vast expanse here probably is regrowth. It's multi-stemmed. There's a couple more on the other side and one that was knocked off at the top. But whenever you see them clustered this close together, it pretty much means that 1,000, 2,000 years ago, there was another giant, the whole span of this. And out of that, when it tumbled, came down or was killed by the wind or topped, the new sprouts like this came out. So this is Redwoods, Sequoia sempervirens. Northernmost part of its range is up here and slightly into coastal Oregon. But you can see they're doing just fine now in the climate of Puget Sound, and they're going to need to be there as climate continues to warm this century. October 22nd, 2016, giant redwood again. This is Seabeck Conference Center. This is the giant redwood planted in 1949, and I've just spent 2 hours going back into the forest and photo documenting on the video the instances of redwoods that I could find growing right in this nearly old-growth forest. The smallest ones were very small, and the biggest one I found was probably about this diameter, many different ages. Probably the most useful thing I found is that they're mostly very low on this slope here. So they are naturalizing, continuing to naturalize many different ages into the forest by themselves. People are not planting them here now. They are naturalizing. But they don't go very far up slope. So they're capable of naturalizing into a mature forest. Very much along the trails and other places where the canopy is opened is where you usually find them. But they're certainly not invasive. They're not moving very fast. They're not dispersing very fast. So in a normal time of paleogeology climate shift, that would work. But not in this century. Not in this century of rapid climate change. So this is a stunning example of an experiment in assisted migration that's already underway since 1949 and can be studied. This is a superb PhD project. Come out here and really study these naturalized trees. June 25th, 2017, a group of 5 friends of trees gathered in Hutt Park to examine the thriving offspring of the old redwood. These young trees had all been planted not by humans, but by nature, carried on the wind from the mother tree. 3 of the group were founders of conservation organizations focused on trees. From left to right, that's me, Connie Barlow. I'm founder of Torreya Guardians, which is a citizen group that assisted the poleward migration of the first tree endangered by climate change. That was Torreya taxifolia, native to Florida. We moved it to the southern Appalachians and even further north. I also advocate for the assisted migration poleward of many other native trees in this century of too rapid climate change. Next is Philip Stielstra, one of Seattle's first tree ambassadors, and now a volunteer with the Archangel Ancient Tree Archive. Last winter, Philip led the effort to find public park locations in the Seattle area for planting 300 potted sprouts of redwood trees, all clones of the biggest redwood trees in California. These young redwoods were donated by the Archangel Ancient Tree Archive Project. A total of 30 communities on the east shore of Puget Sound, the Salish Sea, planted all the redwoods. Finally, Michael Foster founded the Seattle chapter of the International Plant for the Planet group, through which children organize and initiate projects to plant trees as a way to help bring carbon back out of the atmosphere and into living plants and soil. He also is one of the founders of 350 Seattle, and you'll hear him speak of his most recent climate direct action in the video itself. All 3 of us participated in the December 2016 planting of baby redwood trees in Jefferson Park, Seattle, which was led by the Plant for the Planet kids. So let's begin this video documentation of the Hutt Park redwoods, with me behind the camera and narrating what we discover. First, notice on the Google Maps that Hutt Park is just a few blocks from the cool waters of Puget Sound. This is crucial. Seattle area has always had some drought weeks in the summer, and with climate change, these are now stretching into drought months. Luckily, these conditions also tend to generate coastal fog, which is known to be crucial for redwood trees in their historically native range of the northern California coast. Now here's the videos. Philip, how do you pronounce your last name?
Stielstra.
Stielstra, okay. Of the Archangel Champion Tree Project. That's been, what's the closest park here that you've got your little baby redwoods planted?
They're planted in Yost Park in Edmonds.
Yeah, I noticed that that's only like about a 6-minute drive away to the north.
That's right.
Yeah, or the south.
South of here.
Yeah. So this is the mother, the big mother tree here, and we're going to go on and here you can see some pretty grown-up basils here, branching that comes down here, and we're going to go look around and take a look at seedlings that have come through from this tree, how they're growing and where they seem to grow well.
Looking down in that landscape at the south end of Hutt Park, there are several coast redwoods that are 20 to 30 feet high.
Yeah, I think
Perhaps
I see some
4 or 5 inch, 6 inch diameters down at the base.
Wow. Well, let's go check them out.
Nice.
So Philip, you say this is the oldest of the offspring, probably? Right
It's
here?
one of the 2 oldest. There's another one that's also very much that same size.
Okay, so what you've got behind you there is a native cedar, genus Thuja, western red cedar. But right here in front is redwood, and that's another redwood right there.
Yep.
And then this is the one, look at the red bark. It's like nothing else has bark this red in this habitat that's native. They're getting a lot of sun. And then here's another one. Wow. We came from back there. Here's a little trail that we're on. And Philip, point out where we're at right now. What do you see?
Well, on both sides of this trail, here's the grove of 4, fairly large. Here's smaller ones over here, but a grove of 1, 2, and then a much larger one down there, reaching up into that open sunlit area. And these are only 2 to 3 inch diameter, but the one further down is probably 4 to 5.
Yeah, and this is quite a sunny little area.
And as we follow the path around, we'll find even some more.
Okay.
Here's 3 small redwoods right in a row. The larger one here, which is sprouting lots of new leaves. This one's trying hard, but it got beheaded. Some branch must have fallen on it. And so its leader is lying flat. The one below it still has a leader, but it's kind of in its shadow.
And that cute one, little one behind it, that's a cedar, western red cedar, right? Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay, Foster, what have you got?
It's a redwood that is doing really well. It's pretty big around the base here, and the bark is kind of stripped away. You can see the flaky bark up above and the hairy bark down below. Somebody or something has come in and cut these little tiny branchlets right off at the trunk.
Right.
Somebody or something, and sure enough, around here, all around here in this area, somebody has, looks like, pruned this bush right over here. So it's a really strong looking, healthy specimen right here with big neighbors all around at a distance. So it's really well situated if it wants to shoot up and not have competition directly overhead.
Right. I wonder if that's why the park staff did this.
Protection all around.
Yeah.
You know, it's not hanging out in the wind here.
Now I wonder if this this fallen, you can see there's some cuts here, whether this was a hemlock that fell, and would it have, look how close it might have come if whether this, but you say the bark's been kind of.
Yeah. Because here's the flaky bark, and then right about yay high, somebody or something has come in and, it looks like to me, peeled it away and cut these little branches or gnawed them off or something.
We'll have to look at the other ones.
Could be something. Certainly not. No beaver saws branches like we see around here.
Right, right. And I wonder at what point, you know, conifer trees in particular go through very different bark structures based on their stage in life. And so the base area would always be turning into the mature structure earlier than that. And in my limited experience, as you see as you look up, you don't see the redness, but when you look down, it's like obviously red. So we'll have to look around like at the mama tree and others and see what the distinctions are on that. Yeah.
Nice.
But this is good. So this tree is being taken care of by the park staff. And here, as Foster was saying, as we look around, that's a big Dougie there, and what was this? This is a big red cedar that we were just looking at there, and here's also some more adolescent redwoods that we were looking at. We're back in there too. So right in the center of the picture there is that bright red bark where we were just at. And coming up to the little trail here, this is the native western red cedar, genus Thuja. And there's a little redwood there. And here are the older offspring, naturalized here, that planted themselves and are doing very well. You can see the amount of sun coming in. So we'll keep exploring.
Here, a couple more.
A couple more in here. Oh yeah.
Right here.
How much carbon is
God.
that tree going to capture long after you're dead, dude?
It's hard.
And they're all
I don't know the
gotta be pretty
numbers
darn accurate. At least they showed up in the
of
park.
what a mature redwood
But
can
here's the
do,
amount of trees.
just in terms of carbon.
I had
Yeah.
labeled
And
each
water.
one, whether it was small.
In a day, much less a year, and could possibly live 3,000-4,000 years.
Yeah, and here we are standing here right now at
Watching
this
the
moment in
babies.
time where
Yeah.
where people who care are doing both adaptation to climate change that's unstoppable at some level,
Yeah.
and that is trying to help the forest sequester carbon and stay good, water holding devices and so forth. But this dude right here is also into mitigation and willing to give up his freedom, possibly. One of the 5 valve turners who shut down.
If I can't convince the jury that they need to go shut down some pipelines too. The English ivy, somebody, I don't know what'll happen here. Somebody's cutting back some brush and trying to give these trees a little more space.
You know what would be interesting to find? Where any of the redwoods actually, seed fell there and it grew on its own. I would imagine it would be incapable of growing if it fell into the ivy. I would
Yeah.
imagine it would be incapable of growing.
I think that's what ivy does. Yeah, just crowds everything else out.
Yeah.
We got some ivy and some berries.
They did have a work party here a while back, and you
Yeah.
can see rolls of ivy up on the other path.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And
dead ivy
obviously,
all
they're
piled up.
paying attention. Have they done anything helpful to this one? What's going on with this one here?
Doesn't look like it's got ivy around
It's
the
got
base.
ivy around it.
They're kind of going against the rules because this park is supposed to be completely natural. Nobody messed with it.
So maybe it's guerrilla horticulture.
They're naturally seeded redwood, and it has been given a new lease on life because the ivy has been cleaned up around it. So what they do is they just pull it up and then they just keep rolling it and turn it into a big carpet and put it up on logs so it just dries out and then can be disposed of.
Right, and right up the tree behind you, I can see that if we look up, you can see where they cut the ivy that had been hooked on below. Yeah, so this place, because of the ivy, really requires some continuing citizen or park staff effort. On the opposite side of this tree, Foster found the smallest redwood thus far. All but myself and my husband, Michael Dowd, then had to leave for other events. But I was determined to look for the smallest, youngest seedlings, and thereby get a sense of where the redwoods prefer to grow, and what their challenges are here in Hutt Park. So I began by going back to the mother tree. Here's another view of the mother tree. You can see the basils coming out there. I'll move up. This will be a bigleaf maple coming into view here. But right there, yeah, you can see where 2 stems left, and apparently one of those actually is topped off up above there. So there's really only one growing tall anymore. This is really fortunate. I was just standing by the big mother tree here and turned away and was looking at the ground to try to find a seedling, like a really small one, and look what I found instead. A recently fallen down branch that has the old pollen structures on it. I'll try to get a closer look at those two. That's just really important to have found. Okay, empirical evidence that this does put out pollen. Right there in the center you can see the dark reddish brown of the trunk. That's a mother tree. And I just wanted to photograph this. This is a spruce, and a Sitka spruce right along the coast, our native here. Sitka spruce is a relative of white spruce, and so this certainly has a type of branches of white spruce. So I'm going to consider this Sitka spruce. I'm not really familiar with what the bark looks like at this age, or any age in particular. But again, this is what had been a private estate garden, and so rhododendron planted here, and some kind of an Asian Larix genus was planted here. So who knows? But perhaps this is a Sitka spruce. There's a Sitka spruce. The mother tree is behind there, maybe 40-50 feet. And right along the trail here, see there's a little path, there is a young sequoia. Look at how many inches in between each of the growth spurts here. Look at that one. My gosh, what's that, about 18 inches in that growth spurt in there? But what I wanted to show in particular was this one has a number of basal sprouts coming out. Doesn't mean it's unhealthy. This is very typical. But all of those have still very alive leaders going vertical on there. And what I hadn't noticed before, but this is really interesting, look at these little globules coming out there. Those protuberances on the lower part of the bark. I bet all those places basals could emerge if the tree is stressed. In fact, look at the yellowish on there. Yeah, there's a couple, look at that. Couple little basals coming out of that one. Very interesting. All right, coming along this path, and this large tree here, looking up you can see how some ground staff here, or volunteers, cut the bases of those ivy so that it could finally kill it. Look at this beautiful grand tree. This is a grand fir. And grand fir is native here. It's got that same sort of flat, move over here, flat branchlet form that you'll find on the redwoods growing like that. But very distinctive leaf structure. Grand fir. Okay, there's the grand fir. I just came from looking at a beautiful little tree with basal sprouts around it there. Following along the path here, and my husband Michael Dowd just pointed out, we're on the lookout for the littlest redwood. And I think this is it. Maybe about 12 inches tall or so. Leaning over, so it had some problem there, but it's got a nice leader coming straight out there, so it'll do fine. All the needles feel very soft to me. Let me see which one's here. Totally soft in here, totally soft. Let me find. Okay, so this was previous year's growth here, but and so it's this. It's got a new soft area on the edge, but But yeah, all this area here, new this year. Lovely little seedling right along the edge of the path here. Let's see what it has to. It's got some sun. Ground staff is going to have to keep that ivy off of it, otherwise it's probably doomed if they don't. So that's really important to know. Keep an eye on that one right at this juncture of the trail that goes this way by a large western red cedar. And what is this? I have no idea what this is, but again, this was landscaped more than half a century ago. And then the other trail continues that way. So whoever's involved in this, keep the invasive English ivy off of that cute little redwood tree. Here's another spruce, and it's got that orangish bark, same small needled leaf structure, not very pickery. So yes, this would be a Sitka spruce, almost certainly a Sitka spruce, and it's chosen a not very good place to be. It's really struggling to get any sun up there, so it's questionable as to whether this one's going to live. I see this being cut all over the place. This is one that's very typical for tall hedges if you keep them cut in the Seattle area. Looks like some kind of a laurel to me, but I really don't know. There's some more that were cut over there. So they are trying to tone down some of the species that were here that are not natives. Wow. Look at all the English ivy. This one hasn't been rescued yet. You can see the ivy is living all the way to the base. Look at the breadth around that. What is that, a Douglas-fir? I don't think so. Is that a hemlock? I don't know, but look at that. Oh, man. You can see how with this, oh gosh, just look down here. Look at those two other trees there, where they haven't rescued the trees yet from the English ivy. Oh. Huh. Let me just go in close here and you can see how horrific this is. There's just no way without tending that little seedlings could get started. The ivy would just overtake it. Yeah, this area really does have to have citizens, volunteers keeping track of it and getting involved in work parties with the official staff, because obviously the staff alone can't handle this level of problem. There's a good place to stop, and you can see that even when this laurel type hedge plant gets cut, it keeps coming back from the root. You can see where they've tried to get rid of it. Look at the size of that English ivy root that was cut through there, and the tree in the center. That big tree there, oh gosh, look at it going up. Oh yeah, look at, they cut that one long ago, but to the right of it is another sprout that's already growing quite a bit. Look at the green, the dark green ivy coming up, and that's it, enveloping the lower part of the tree. Now over here to the next, this one had some English ivy that's been killed, but it's coming back again. And what's interesting here, this is a really good place to see the difference between the bark of the Douglas-fir on the left, and this is a Grand Fir on the right, because at a distance you might think that this was redwood, but these branches are not redwood. Let me go in close. It's got kind of that rounded edges of the branches, completely flat. This is the Grand Fir, native to the Pacific Northwest here. Coming along one of the paths, paused here in this deep shade, and this is native species commingling here. That typical bark structure of Douglas-fir on the left, and that's what's called the Western Red Cedar, genus Thuja, on the right. So here's those two native species, and I'm going to spin around here because this is probably the biggest of the deciduous trees, native deciduous trees. Right in the center, those two there, look how huge they are. That's a bigleaf maple. Walking along the path, here's another baby redwood that the crew here has saved. You can see, just like the other one, it started off and it looks like it was overpowered, crushed down, probably, it's got that curve to it, by the surrounding English ivy. And then somebody cut completely around it. So let's take a top-down view. Looks really healthy, but this is going to need continuing support to keep it from being suffocated by the English ivy. So the way to find it, this is pretty easy. Up here, here's the trail I just came from, and here's that massive group of interspecies trees, Douglas-fir and cedar. And looking in the other direction, this is the way to find it. See, there had been a tree fall in here. And here's a very large Western Red Cedar. Okay, just came from there. That had that very young redwood seedling right along the trail. And I'm pivoting around here, first of all, because I had assumed this was a hemlock, it's so big, but no. The bark, and then as you look up, look at that glorious big leaf maple. And right over here is the bark structure of what Douglas-fir looks like when it gets older. It gets that almost sort of very pale beige bark system. I was just taking a picture of a big Douglas-fir there and a big leaf maple, and it came from a little redwood seedling there. And I noticed overhead something that looked like a redwood leaf structure. So I came here, and this bark is unmistakable. This is a Pacific Yew. This is not a redwood. This is native here, but you can see it's the same leaf structure. And the way that I can tell is that when you take and rip off one of these little tiny leaflets here, it comes just with its tiny little stem. Whereas if you do that to the redwood, it rolls back the green bark away and you get a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of bark on there. So this is definitive. And you can see it's starting to turn that purple color rather than the orangey red that a redwood have. So this is fabulous. We have got ourselves a Pacific Yew, subcanopy tree, native here, growing underneath the Douglas firs. Here's the other side of that Pacific Yew. You can see it's got little branchlets coming out. This could be a Pacific Yew this size could be very old. What surprises me, it's a single stem. I don't think I've ever seen one with a single stem, and in fact I think this is the oldest one I've ever seen. But what I'm also starting to do, look what's creeping up this side of it. This is English ivy. So I'm going to have to tell Philip about this so that whenever he comes out here next, he can work with others to try to do a rollback of this. Oh gosh, this terrible, just terrible ivy. Oh gosh, that is really hard. Yeah, you got to cut it from down in there. And so, way to find it. Look for those two big, beautiful trees and this gorgeous, huge cedar. And then right over here, I'm zooming in on it, that's the redwood seedling that also needs tending all the time. Over behind that giant cedar in the center there, coming along the path, right behind there was where I was filming that very large Pacific Yew. Coming along the path, my husband had already discovered, thank you Michael Dowd, along here, look at this. Somebody is caring for this right along the edge of the trail. This one is very healthy. This is a redwood. Now, I also noticed and cleared away that branch. Right over here is a very misshapen redwood style, a very young tree. But I do not know what that is. I don't know if it's a Pacific Yew. I tried to pull off a couple branchlets and they broke in half. Or whether, what does a Grand Fir look like when it starts out young? I don't know, but it's definitely misshapen. Now partly it had this branch on it, but here you can see it here, and it had tried to grow here, and this didn't work out. But having a structure like this is either a real struggling redwood, or it's a typical multi-stemmed Pacific Yew. I don't know, but it'll be useful to keep an eye on it. So here, coming right over the top, let me go down like this because this has got a really nice leader on it. Right here. And you can see it's right along the trail here. So I was just pointing out this little baby redwood and then that tiny thing that I don't know what it is behind it with that branch that had fallen over the far one, and turned around and look what I see right here. What a gorgeous little redwood. So the only ones that seem to be growing, and again, nobody's planting these, are right along the edge of the trail, clearly capable of getting sun, and maybe this close to the edge of the trail. Look at, on this side here, they seem to be keeping out the English ivy. I don't think the English ivy can cross a trail very easily. So this one will keep going, even without additional help. There's a big Douglas-fir straight behind, other native trees here. Right here we've got another cedar, and Michael, point out to me where you saw another.
Right here.
Oh my, okay. Right along this very wide trail section here. Yep, look at that. This one leaning somewhat, but look at it's putting out very nice vertical terminals there. That lower area, ooh, this is interesting. Look at this. This has already got a very brown trunk. I wonder if it was held back by being in the shade. See how brown that stem is? And it's already got all these basal sprouts growing right from it. Very typical redwood behavior. What are you finding there, Michael? Another one? Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm coming over. Oh, wow. Look at that. Ooh. Just look at this leaf structure. The new growth. Boy, this one, look at how wide apart those branchlets are and how many there are in there. This tree obviously feels it's getting enough sun and it's growing gangbusters. Look at the length of that. It looks about 8 inches going to the top there. And below that, maybe 5. Another layer down. Another layer down. Let me see if there's any basils here. This one tilts too to begin with. Oh yeah, look at right along the edge there. Got ourselves a basil. Here we've got a hemlock. Here you can see the branching structure of a hemlock. And what's interesting here, you can see that it's growing out of what had been a stump. Much redder in there, so I'm going to guess that that was a red cedar stump. And then a hemlock landed on the top of the stump, grew for a while, ultimately put its roots down, but we can still see a bit of that nurse log, in this case a nurse stump, on this little hemlock. We just came from this area. There was one over there. I'm ultimately going to be going up in there, but I noticed, again, right near the edge of the trail, here's a redwood that seems like it's been stressed for most of its life. See how curvy that area is in the bottom? Yeah, see that? It hasn't been growing very fast, and its leaf structure just is not as vibrant as the one we just looked at that had a lot of sun. So here it is, and this is what you would expect of a tree that's having difficulty finding sun, and that's that what it needs more than anything is photosynthesis, get its roots structured. So do you see how far out this lateral branch goes? Quite a ways. I'll have to do a test to make sure that this truly is a redwood rather than a Pacific Yew. I just did a branchlet pulling test on one of the older, stiffer, dark green ones, and it came off with a good stretch of that greenish bark, so that is a sure sign that this truly is a redwood and not a Pacific Yew. So Michael is, oh my gosh, here's another one right here. This is full of them right along the edge. Yeah, this clearly has that redwood look to it. Also, look how fast it's going up. Pacific Yews just don't grow very fast. And this one, let's take a look down here at its structure. Oh my gosh, this one really had to lean a lot. Oh, wow. Look at how much this one had to lean to find its way out of, when it was a baby, out of the shade of this incredible sword fern, because south would be this direction. And so, and this sword fern too would have been, yeah, so look at that. Goes there, and then it goes there, and then it heads up, and it's got, now it's finding some sun. Look at this, and it's got quite a lateral branching system, so you see it was struggling to find sunlight for photosynthesis. But it looks to me like it realizes it's found the sun. So we just looked at this little redwood here that had been shaded by these sword ferns on the south and southwest side. Again, we're right along the path here, big path. But I'm trying to keep track of all the young ones that I can see, and this is a real small one right here. This one is, let's see how it got started. Oh my, got started way out here. Way out here. And I've tested it, it's a redwood, not a Pacific Yew. You see it's got some little branchlets coming out there, not quite basals, but moving in this direction. And look, it's made an absolute 90 degrees from where it had been stretching, and now a 90 degrees heading up. So whatever the staff did to liberate this, it's quite happy right now. And here's another way to find it. Look at this root system coming out here of this giant. What the heck was that? Oh gosh, there's another one right at my feet. Oh, this would have been a bigleaf maple. Boy, that would have been an old one. Look at this crashing down. And then here's another redwood right at my feet here. Oh, let's see what it's got. Look at this. This one does have, looks like a basal sprout or two coming up. And this one, not lush growth, but it is trying to head upward, so maybe it does get some sun at some point. All right, so Michael is back a little side trail here. He's found something. Oh my gosh, before I get there, look at this cute little thing. Right out on its own. This thing is so healthy. Look at that. Look at that light colored growth. And a beautiful terminal coming right out of the center. This is a vibrant little tree going straight up, but I wonder if it's recently been liberated because it's a very dark purple-red below and then goes up. I wonder if it had been struggling for a while, but now look at how it's all by itself out here. And this is a hemlock. This is not a redwood here. And as I just flip around here, I can see another one right there. And I'm not even going to go in on those, but another one right there. So this path is absolutely superb for seeing little seedlings and keeping track of them to make sure that nothing falls and stays fallen on them, and that the ivy does not start coming over the top. So Michael was trying to get me to come back here to witness this gorgeous old Douglas-fir with him. It looks like it's experienced a fire in its age. Looking up, look at no side branches forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. And there it is, up there. And a lot of sun is coming in here. This place is full of ivy. Obviously, they've kept the ivy from growing on that tree. And this is just way too full of ivy and salmonberry, blackberry, Siberian probably, for any redwood to even possibly try. But having them along the edges of the trail, that's perfect. Great way to keep track of them. Great way to keep them from being overrun. So we're going to go back down here to the trail. And it's this wide section of the trail where I was just filming at least 10. There's a little one right here. There's the last two that I was looking at both look excited to be growing here. Wonderful spots. All right, we're going to continue. Oh, here's another one. Yep. Yep. Okay, just wandered from back in that area and right along this section of trail, right amidst these giant sword ferns. Look what I saw right here. And even though the top, that growth looks fabulous, look at how many years it took to get to the point where it could send that out. Because when we look at it here, you see there is no light green terminal growth coming up at all. It's lateral in here. Oh yeah, we do. We've got about 2 inches in there going up. But look at this long curvy stem of the tree trying to find its way up through. And it looks like we have, not sure, but it looks like we have a couple basal growths in there. I'll check it to make sure it's a redwood, but it looks exactly like a redwood to me. And yes, that little tree in the center there, that is a redwood. And turning slowly to continue on the path, came upon this redwood. It's got ivy growing around it, so volunteers are going to need to make sure it stays liberated. I think a tree has to get a little bit taller and wider for the ivy to be willing to go up it. But you can see how very large that terminal growth is there. It's doing well. Just finished the trail there. Coming back to the junction of trails, here's the main one that goes out to where we park the cars. It was down here that we first went exploring after we found the juveniles and after our friends left. But I'm going to be heading back in this direction and seeing what we see. So the parking area in the side roads, maybe 100 feet, maybe a little more in that direction. This is where we first started off with our friends, and this is the opening left after big stems of the mother tree, the redwood tree. There's Michael for scale. Came off in a storm. Let me move this way, get the sun out of the way, and see if I can get a good view to the top here. Yeah, there we go. There you can see the second stem that remains is actually cut off at the top, though it still has living branches there. And there's only one that's going to carry on up as a tall redwood tree. We're almost out. Michael's already at the car, and I just had to stop here by this redwood because look at the beautiful basal sprouts coming out of it. Some older. You can see one right there that's actually, wow, that one's quite tall. Goes up to maybe 3 feet tall here. But I was looking at these ones that are still, still green. These are the ones that if one wanted to clone these, you could probably cut off a branchlet tip of only the vertical ones, not lateral branches, and root it, and it would turn into a tree rather than a shrub. You would never want to do that to all the basals around any plant. You've got to leave at least one, probably two, just in case something horrible happened to this tree and it needed to get one of those basals to shoot up ahead. Look at the beautiful sun hitting it up here. What a wonderful place, Hutt Park. Great place to see how redwoods not only survive here, but naturalize. Need a little help from humans in keeping the ivy down. Thank you, redwoods and park staff and volunteers.